So that's how we work out our salvation with fear and trembling. We know God is at work in us. And all of that is a bit of a review from that first point we covered last week, to understand the mandate against grumbling. We must understand the mandate, the serious command that this is, the comprehensive importance of our trust in God, our gratitude toward God. Grumbling and disputing are not blameless. They are not innocent, as verse 15 then contrasts. And that leads to that second point we covered last week. Understand the motivations against grumbling. We should be motivated. We should want to be resting in God's promises and His providence, praising Him for what He has done and what He will do. We should want that for at least 3 reasons. We named a number of reasons last week, but we should want that for at least 3 reasons that I mentioned, and I began covering only the first one last week. And so today we'll let those motivations be our outline as we walk through verses 15 and 16 this week. Those will be our outline as we consider 3 reasons not to grumble. 3 encouragements, you might say a positive, 3 encouragements toward thankfulness, toward contentment. We gave some general motivations last week, but verses 15 and 16 give some more. So look at verses 15 and 16 again. And so that first motivation to see here is this kind of new life proves the character of God is growing in us. You might note it like this. First motivation against grumbling and disputing. Be motivated, number 1, to pursue assurance for yourself. We talked a bit about that last week. Point number 1, to pursue assurance for yourself. That first motivation is personal. Rejoice, rest in God's providence for your own assurance, to pursue assurance of salvation, assurance of God's grace in your life for yourself. If you want assurance, if you want confirmation, if you want the rest of soul that God truly has saved you, realize that grows. God grows that encouraging affirmation as we focus on living by faith and gratitude with thankfulness in response to all He is for us. That cultivates that assurance. As we work out the implications of our salvation in ways that decrease grumbling and disputing, we sort of align with God's mind in that way. We increasingly are freed from the external faults and the internal impurities. That's what those words blameless and innocent indicate. And that shows in relationships with other Christians. He's the children of God above reproach. So we prove practically in that way with each other to be what we already are spiritually, children of God and His family. And as that goal is increasingly fulfilled, it brings encouragement, it brings assurance. And so that's a first motivation, to pursue assurance for yourself. But as we said last week, God's purpose always extends just beyond just us, right? Beyond just us personally. God's love in us will flow outward from us. And so a second motivation to note, and this is where we kind of pick up from last week, is that we should want to proclaim light for the lost. Sure, we should want to pursue assurance for ourselves, but then secondly, we should want to proclaim light for the lost. Be motivated to proclaim light for the lost by living a gracious and not grumbling life, a grateful life. Verse 15 highlights that by describing where we are. Read it again to think about where we are. So that you will prove yourselves to be blameless and innocent, children of God above reproach. What? In the midst of a crooked and perverse generation, among whom you appear as lights in the world. So we are in the midst of a crooked and perverse generation. That's where we are. And we're to shine as lights in a spiritually dark world. Right? And so for example, peace of heart and life rather than anger or anxiety, it testifies that there is an anchor that holds you, that is more firm, more secure than your circumstances. That's distinct. That you are grateful rather than grumbling. That you are aligned with God's will. So you turn away from lying and slander and gossip and pride and immorality that proves you are distinct, you are unique and different from the warped world around us. In the midst of this crooked and perverse generation, upholding and modeling God's ways, it shines brightly as a better, more beautiful way to live. First, to pursue assurance for yourself, be motivated. Second, to proclaim light to the lost. Thirdly, lastly today, be motivated. Thirdly, to prepare rewards for the future. Point number 3, be motivated to prepare rewards for the future. But Paul's point here, and the application for you, is that I pray that motivates you. That motivates you to live out a life of gratitude, not grumbling, of faithfulness, not disputing, of distinctiveness. I pray that you're motivated to pursue assurance for yourself, to proclaim light for the lost, and to prepare rewards for the future.